Wow, he set the bar low, didn't he? Thanks, Rob. Does anyone know Rob's nickname? It's the Mayor. So if you see Rob, call him the Mayor, and it's because he knows everybody. You're supposed to set the bar low so that I can exceed it, right? It's all a team effort, all the Intel community stuff, all Carbon Black, everything else is a team effort. Here today to kick it off, get some energy going. I got like 45 slides to do in about 35 minutes, so we'll get moving here. And excited to be here. Thank you to SANS, thank you to all the sponsors, thank you to our team. And no, I'm not the Ben Johnson from the '88 Olympics, although I get asked that pretty much every week. If you're too young, he did steroids and lost the gold medal in the '88 Olympics. So today's goal, walking away thinking this was time well spent, thinking that you learned something. I'll try not to pace too much, but I have a lot of energy and I like walking around. I like these summits because I think the term is forced reflection. It's time away from email, time away from hopefully fighting fires, probably the busiest people in the room for your respective companies. And you get to think about a lot of things at a conference like this, a summit like this. I love it because when I go to RSA or Black Hat, I'm typically just meeting with prospects, customers, partners. I've never even seen a talk at RSA or Black Hat, but I attend every year. So I get to see all these great talks yesterday and today, and it's been awesome so far, and I really look forward to the rest of the talks today. So I don't really even need this slide because Rob showered accolades that are probably not even deserved, right? Thank you, Rob, for embarrassing me. So I got my start at NSA, went to Mantech, it's missing there, Fred and Henry and Rob, Phil Hagan, Richard Baitlick, all these other guys, a bunch of the Carbon Black guys. I have a couple computer science degrees. I usually put that up there because maybe you guys have a connection to Johns Hopkins or University of Chicago. And because I'm not busy enough, I'm also a lecturer at University of Chicago for entrepreneurship. And I'm probably already connected with a lot of you on Twitter or LinkedIn, but please connect. I love making connections. So we were talking about doing shots yesterday, right, Matt? For buzzwords and things like that. It's a little early, so maybe you won't do shots. But you'd probably do a keg stand at a slide like this. Because what's a talk without a threatscape or threat landscape? But really, you guys all know this stuff. This is an incredible audience. So what I want to point out is there's all these different groups. And when you're thinking about responding, you're thinking about hunting, you need to think about the insider. Because most of these groups become the insider. How would I hunt an insider? And a lot of times we don't think about that. So this talk is some concepts, some things for you to reflect on, really trying to get you to think more like a hunting mindset for your team. How can you get there? And maybe you're aiming for this, right? Pretty cool guys. Maybe related to some stuff that Rob was talking about. But maybe this is more realistic. So either you're a deer in the headlights, you don't really know what hunting is or how you should start, or maybe you're an awesome hunter, but I think it was, I don't know if it was Heather's slides or someone's slides where there was that list of 20 things that you're doing and you're tacking hunting on the end, so you're slammed. So it's not necessarily easy to get to hunting. So it's hard work. But that's why we're here. We're here to learn, we're here to share, here to unite, here to collaborate. And really, a lot of the things I'm talking about for the next 30 minutes are about uniting man and machine together, making you more effective. Also, I love the matrix, and this is a cool slide, so I usually throw it in there. Before we even get to hunting, we got to talk about farming. And probably no one uses this term. I started using it mostly in relation to this talk and this conference. You heard Rob mention it yesterday. But how can you hunt if you're not even doing the farming, or call it triage, call it response, call it some of the other work? If you're not doing that well, how can you actually get time to hunt? So let's talk about this for a few minutes. So farming. Are you efficient? Are these alerts, are these events just sort of ripening and popping up? And then you just run around trying to pick them and triage them. There's not a great process. Maybe people are standing around in your org because they don't really know what to do. Or even if you are a little bit more efficient, are you effective? Are you working together? Are you all working on the same thing, or should you be more spread out? This is actually asking you more questions than maybe giving you answers. I think it was Alex or someone I was talking to yesterday. He's like, man, we're all asking more questions than giving answers, because a lot of these terms, a lot of these concepts are very specific. So it's more about that forced reflection, thinking about, are we doing the right things in our environment? So a lot of times what happens, and you guys know this better than I do, are that you're responding to whatever sort of flames up. You're firefighting. It's not very effective. And oh, by the way, so my sort of skipped this part because Rob gave me such a great introduction. My title is Chief Security Strategist, and that means I basically fly around the world every week and talk to companies. By the end of this month, I'll have done 300,000 miles in 25 months. 500 organizations from US Cyber Command down to, I think 12 of the Fortune 20 down to little companies. So I mention that because I have good perspective, I think. I meet with so many of you and talk to so many of you, partners. Next week I'll be in Denmark, Holland, Sweden, and Dubai, and that's like a typical week for me. It might sound cool, but when you do lunch in Chicago, dinner in Seattle, and breakfast in Boston in an 18-hour period, it's not very fun. Yes, I've done that. So anyways, back to this. A lot of firefighting out there. A lot of companies are still just waiting for something to pop up, and you respond to that, maybe not even that efficiently or effectively. And you have these different stages, and I apologize, there's a lot of buzzwords in here, so you can start doing shots now if you want. But there's a lot of buzzwords, but it's because those are how we describe certain concepts, certain terms, etc. So when you have dwell time and when you're responding and going through this incident handling, incident management lifecycle, you have the detection stage, you have the response stage, you have the recovery stage. You might use different terms, but you have a bunch of pieces you have to do. And they take too long. And a lot of times why we do that, why it takes so long, is because we're collecting data after the fact. Rob mentioned yesterday that forensics is kind of becoming a four-letter word, at least if you think about the disk imaging and the full memory dumps, things like that, because it's a human waiting for a machine to do a pretty simple operation. It's not very efficient. So you should be thinking about collecting data ahead of time. We play on the endpoint, but this could be NetFlow, this could be full packet capture, this could be proxy logs, whatever. You should be collecting data ahead of time. Because the goal here is to shrink the overall cycle. Casey gave a talk yesterday from First Bank. He doesn't set the camera up after the robbery. He sets it up ahead of time. You know what questions you're going to have during triage, during response. Make sure you can answer them. And not only that, and I love this quote, response is the closest thing we have in IT to dogfighting. By the way, go watch Bruce Schneier's Black Hat 2014 recording from YouTube or something. It's a great talk. He said this. And it's so right. You're having to move quickly. You're having to fight. And by the way, thank you, JD. I had to put pictures of jets here because people thought it was actual dogs fighting. Never crossed my mind until people started asking about it. I'm like, no, not Michael Vick, Top Gun. So yeah. So it's a fight, right? It's dogfighting. But it's even worse than that because remember the insider? Quick little sentence I talked about, you have to hunt for insiders. They're doing this. They're blending in. They're living off the land, or you might call it the outsider-insider problem. You might have your own terminology. But they get credentials, and what are they? They become an employee, or they use things like PowerShell, WIMI, all these other tools. They're not necessarily using these cyber superweapons or these malicious binaries. And this isn't necessarily new. Sorry, Target. I know everyone kind of feels bad by now for picking on Target, but if you look at the Target report, it says attackers mostly used IT-specific tools, protocols, and procedures. Seldom do they use hacker-specific tools and malware. They just had the RAM scraping malware, and they mostly used the system administrator tools and the infrastructure to push that out to all the point of sale. And that's just one example, but that's happening all the time. So it makes response, and eventually when we talk about hunting more, harder, because you're looking for the insider. You're looking for the guy that looks like your buddy, but really it's not your buddy. And so when you start thinking about this, you have to look at so much more activity, so much more beneath the surface. So instead of just looking at a binary, is this good or bad, and making a decision, we all have seen how that works on the AV side, you have to think about what's going on in your environment, like what's going on once that binary runs or once that user logs in. Can you look for abnormal behavior? Can you look for account compromise? Can you look for lateral movement, data exfil? And I could go on, because you don't know everything bad ahead of time. And that's really why we're hunting. If we knew everything bad ahead of time, we would not have jobs. We would just plug something in and walk away. But you can't forget about IT. You can't forget about your posture and really IT hygiene. I can't stress this enough. Is your environment like this or like this? Is anyone's environment like this? No? It'd be awesome if it was. But this is what you're aiming for, because if it's like this, when you're starting to look for anomalies, who's going out of turn? Who's doing the wrong thing? Who's sitting in the middle of the intersection because that's not normal or not allowed by law? Well, everyone is. So you got to think about your gold images. Think about where the entropy exists. And try to get here so that when the car goes perpendicular to the rest of the pack, or in this case, your activity looks very different, that's where you can focus. That's going to save you time. Remember this whole notion of farming or response or triage? That's going to save you time. And so if you start thinking about pulling data together and dogfighting and environments, you have to start thinking about how do you craft what humans see when you're doing response farming, whatever you want to call it. So kind of the old way of just doing forensics, sorry, Rob, or just once in a while looking for something is not ideal. So people are switching to continuous recording. And this could be endpoint, this could be NetFlow, full packet capture, proxy logs, user credential usage, et cetera. Whatever it is, you're trying to collect more data. And I think that was a theme yesterday, is you need data to be able to hunt. This is really still talking about response and detection, but you need data to hunt. But you don't stop there. You add threat intelligence. And feel free to do shots anytime I say any of these words. You need reputation information. Someone thinks that your human should start on the dark red dot. Hey, at least that's better than not knowing where to start. But don't stop there either. Make it specific to your environment. Is it prevalent? Is it frequent? Is it rare? We saw some things yesterday. Show me files that only exist on one domain controller out of 200. That kind of information is critical. But you don't stop there either. You go to the relationship level. If I see an unknown binary, but every single thing it's doing is known good, I can prioritize that for my team below an unknown binary doing unknown things. Or a known good binary, like PSExec, PowerShell, et cetera, doing suspicious things. Because it's all about how do you save time so that you can eventually hunt. So instead of just thinking about like the old school forensics or memory dumps or offline analysis, you got to start thinking about the bank security camera. And what am I really talking about here? Context. I think we heard this yesterday as well. You got to have context. It's so important. Hey, FTP is running in my environment. Oh, great. It runs all the time. No. FTP is running on my head of HR's machine spawned by PowerShell. Okay, that changes the equation. So when you start thinking about your posture, your security stack, there's this flag from like the Revolutionary War times where the colonies in the US were uniting together and saying, look, we got to join together or die. And that's really what we got to think about when we talk about our stack, our security stack. And this could be more than just technology. This could be team. This could be cross your teams. But we got to join together or die, but it's beyond that. I think I saw this hashtag yesterday, so feel free to do another shot or a keg stand or something, but it's really automate or die. Because the numbers are too great. There's too much going on. None of you can find people. When Google's having a hard time hiring, good luck to the rest of us, right? And it's not just this notion of automate, it's people like DARPA, who's doing a lot of forward-thinking cyber research and saying only automation can change cyber economics. So you see new spaces popping up, things like orchestration. And yes, I said I would use a lot of buzzwords, but you see things like orchestration popping up, and you should be thinking about these kind of concepts. So instead of an alert coming from a point solution and going straight to an analyst, we're seeing how well that works. Remember context? You add context, but in a more automated way. So you automatically rip out attributes from that alert, check it against your threat feeds. What's the history of this device? We've all heard the term analytics and things like that recently, right? Because is this common for this device to be doing this behavior? Who's the user? Is it the CFO or the intern? If I see Mimikatz run on the CEO's machine, or I see it on the threat researcher's machine, that's a different severity level. I should probably check both, but I'm definitely jumping out of bed on Christmas to fix the CEO's machine. So finally, what comes out? An enriched alert. Enrichment, another buzzword. And then finally, that hits a human. And then if you have the right information, you have the right context, you can make a much more informed decision about your remediation. Are you re-imaging, or can you be more tactical and do things like block IPs, kill processes, preserve evidence, maybe reset credentials in a much more automated way? Because remember the point. The point is to save time so you can spend more time hunting. But you can't just think of automation as the saving grace. You have to have an automated process that's already effective. So I love this quote from Bill Gates. Automation applied to an efficient operation magnifies the efficiency, and conversely, if it's inefficient, it magnifies the inefficiency. You can't just have the messy traffic jam and throw some automation in there and you're good. You still have to do some of the blocking and tackling for another shot there. You have to still have effective security teams, effective security stack, and then you automate that to really magnify their efficiency. So remember, forced reflection, thinking about some of this stuff. Some of you might be already doing all this, but you need to be thinking about it either way. And so this one tech company, 2 security engineers, 20 to 30 alerts per day. They were manually processing 4 to 6 alerts. It would usually take them a couple hours to pull together all the data sources. Time to resolution was about 5 to 10 days. So they reached out and they got from Netflix open sourced something called FIDO, fully integrated defense operations, I think. It's kind of like the dog name. You should go look at it. So this tech company integrated that, and after they integrated that, the same 2 security engineers were processing 50 to 200 alerts per day, so they increased their alert count, but they did it in a much more automated way, and the time to resolution was under an hour. And they said, look, this allows us to add additional detection and additional pieces of our security stack to cover gaps without headcount. And really, it boils down to it's easier to buy technology than to find people. So you have to really unite that man and machine in an effective way. And so if you think about your security stack, you should think about it maybe a little differently, not just like network, endpoint, DNS, proxy, credentials, whatever. Maybe think about it a little bit differently. So you start with something like visibility. You can't stop what you can't see, right? You can't hunt if you don't have something to look at. So you start with visibility. Then you really start working on triage. This could be potentially farming, if you want to use that term, which I don't think will catch on, but if you want to make it catch on, go for it. Then you do things like IOCs, but in an automated way. Pump in tons of them, but try to do it in an automated way. And then, again, what's a summit day without a pyramid of pain reference? But you move up the pyramid of pain and you do things like pattern-based detection. Call them TTPs, call them pattern of compromise, pattern of attack, whatever. But it's moving beyond like hashes and IPs and things like that. Then you add the capability to do it retrospectively. Hey, I just learned about some new technique. Let me go see if this has happened in my environment the last 6 months. So I don't have to wait for something to flag it. Integrate. Lean on your vendors if you don't have connectors between different pieces of your stack. Lean on us. Lean on all of your vendors. Build them yourself. Most products now have APIs. And then automate. Really work this into your team, your workflow. Try to automate things. If an alert comes in and there's a domain in that alert, and your human is ripping out that domain, going to a site, pasting it, and seeing how old that domain is, that is very inefficient and does not require a human mind. And then finally we get to hunting. But people try to skip the whole stack here and go straight to hunting. And if you think about martial arts, it's like the white belt on the bottom and the black belt at the top. People just try to jump into hunting. That's what we're going to do. We're going to jump into hunting. So hunting. But are we really wrestling? We try to do a hunting expedition and you spend most of the time. You finally get a couple hours to hunt, quote unquote hunt. And you spend the whole time wrestling with your tools, things like that. Or maybe you are a little bit better than that, but you don't really have a plan. You're kind of just like willy-nilly going at it. Again, maybe another keg stand. What would a talk be with another Sun Tzu quote? But if you don't have strategy and you just have tactics, not necessarily going to be victorious. Or maybe you are hunting and you're doing it really well, but it's based on these superhumans. What happens if they're on vacation? What happens if they quit? What happens if Google steals them? It's not very scalable. So we're too reliant here. So we're talking about farming and speed. Well, hunting is the same way. It's all about speed. You need that creative time, but you need to be able to track down leads, pull those threads quickly. Otherwise, you're just going to go off, you're going to get bored, and you're going to stop hunting and go back to looking at the sim. So a good decision today is better than a great decision 48 hours from now. I just love this quote. But if you think about the military, and Rob was talking about some of the cool stuff we used to do, so there's a lot of sort of military tie-in, but the Ooda Loop, again, probably another shot for a lot of you. What's a cyber talk without the Ooda Loop? But this notion from 1966 from dogfighting, that in dogfighting, whoever can go through the Ooda Loop fastest is going to be victorious. You can observe the enemy, you can orient the overall situation, decide what to do and act. Whoever can do that fastest is going to win. And it's like that in hunting. You got to be able to figure out what thread is worthy of spending more time on it, because you don't have enough people. But it's not just from 1966. And I'm actually shocked at how little I found tie-in between the new Special Forces JSOC approach and cyber. So we were totally getting our asses kicked in Iraq in 2003 timeframe, 2004. And so JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command, under General McChrystal, said, look, we got to embrace this new way of doing things. So it's called FEED, F3EAD, find, fix, finish, exploit, analyze, disseminate. And as soon as we started doing this as physical, military units, we were successful. But I think it really applies where you're trying to blend ops and intel in a much more tight circle, much faster feedback loop. So find is really identifying who you're going after, especially in the physical world. Fix is fixate their position, figure out where they are. Finish is capture or kill. Exploit in the real world is really try to grab as much from them as you can, phones, hard drives, things like that. You've probably seen Zero Dark 30 and stuff like that. Analyze, actually try to get actionable information out of that and really disseminate. Make sure that goes back into the team as fast as possible. If you think about cyber, this is what you're trying to do too. When you're hunting and you're getting those leads, you need to start really figuring out, is this useful and how fast can I get this? Maybe you're hunting as a team, right? We're trying to get our culture to be more like hunting. Can I get this to the rest of the team fast so then they can maybe investigate that because I want to go back to this other lead? And maybe a new metric, we all need new metrics in cyber, right? Mean time to capture or kill. I think that's a good one. Maybe it's mean time to containment or eradication. But you got to think about this. But it's not just military. So I mentioned I teach entrepreneurship. Well, if any of you are familiar with the lean startup methodology, that's another example. So lean startup doesn't necessarily mean you don't spend money. It means you learn lessons about your business venture as fast as possible. So you have a hypothesis, you measure if it's going to work, and then you learn from it. Dropbox set up a website. They didn't even have a product. They set up a website explaining Dropbox, and they said, hey, sign up if you want this, if you think this is good. They just had a site with a little box that said, put your email in and we'll let you know when it's ready. They had not even developed the product yet. 75,000 people signed up like the first day. I'm like, all right, cool, we're going to build it. So they did very minimal work, and they learned that, yes, this is a viable option for our business. But it's the same thing. How fast can you track down that thing you're hunting, that lead? I have a new gut feeling. Let me go check it, but can I check it as efficient and as effective as possible? You want to minimize the time. So when you're hunting, it's not just about finding APT or finding bad guys or finding malware. There's so many other outcomes that can come from a hunting expedition. Where to hunt? So maybe at the very end of your quote-unquote hunting expedition, the outcome is, oh, I'm going to start here next time and have a much higher success rate or chance of success. What to hunt? Maybe at the very end of your hunting expedition, you're like, man, I'm seeing a whole lot of weird PowerShell here. I didn't see anything, but I really want to go back and investigate this, or WIMI, or weird account usage patterns, but I don't have time to keep going there. So where to hunt? But then also, where are my gaps? Maybe you're finding malicious or suspicious binaries, and your team figures out you're very inefficient at reverse engineering them or detonating them or doing whatever you want with them. So you're finding gaps. Okay, I got to fix my team. Where are my strengths? And how are we getting better Oh, last time this guy was really slow at doing this, now he's really good. Awesome. These are great pieces of feedback, great feedback loops. And then finally, what's one of the major problems with our environments today? And Casey gets credit for this. I love this term. It's deploy and decay. That happens all the time in our environments. We buy tools, we set up logs, whatever. We don't give them the care and feeding. So over time, they decay. Instead of getting better, instead of being optimized, they decay. So in doing your hunting and exploring where you might not normally explore, you may be like, oh man, we're really not capturing the proper logs here. We're not correlating them well together. We talked about canaries and things like that yesterday. Where do I need more care and feeding? That can be an outcome. So instead of having a blind reactive posture, you should be really figuring out where should humans hunt and where should I spend my time. This is a forest fire map, thinking about the fire analogy. I'm not going to send my forest fires to New England. I'm going to send them to the Great Plains and maybe over to California, Nevada. It's the same way. Can you carve off, can you group parts of your environment and basically automate everything or lock them down so that your humans don't really have to spend any time there, and then go hunt in the nasty stuff? And if you think about actual data, these are processes and the domains they connect to and the affinity between them, so how similar they are. See that blue cluster at the top? See that green cluster in the lower left? Those are your servers. They're a lot cleaner. That mess in the middle, that's your employee population. But even there, I could kind of carve off the right side that's mostly green. There's little clusters of pink, purple. I shouldn't really spend much time hunting there. That should be clean enough that I can really focus on automation and technology to alert me when something's anomalous or bad. And the hunting goes in the middle. So wrapping up. So it's all about humans. It's all about humans. And really, if you think about IT, I like to think about IT as a bridge. IT builds a bridge, and it's all about what? Uptime and availability. So IT sort of sits underneath and makes sure it doesn't collapse. But security is the opposite. It's kind of like those special forces guys you saw in the photo. It's about strong people with technology making them more effective. So you have to enable your team to make these fast decisions, do these quick loops, the feed, the Ooda loops, lean startup, all these different examples. And this would definitely be keg stand time, right? Compromise is inevitable. Has anyone never heard that before? Has anyone heard it over 100 times, probably? 1,000 times? And it's because the attacker only has to be successful once, but the defender has to stop 100% of the attacks. And it's even worse than that because your own really gullibility level of your employees also is a factor. So you're kind of defending against the bad guy and your team. But we don't think about this enough. Once they're in your environment, the attacker should have to be 100% perfect. So what you're trying to do is set up your system, set up your detection, raise that bar, and get as close to 100% as possible, and get that gap between where you're at and 100%. That's what hunting is. It's finding that gap between where your technology stops and where's 100% effectiveness. That's hunting. And so we talked about these layers, and you saw this, I think, as well yesterday. It has to feed. Everything has to feed back. When you are doing hunting and you find interesting things, put those in to your detection rules. Add IOCs, add behavioral patterns. Figure out your gaps so you improve triage, improve retrospection. So are you aiming for this? Well, I hope you are, but actually we can aim for better. So if you're talking about uniting man and machine together, you should really be thinking about intelligence and drones. Thanks.